And then it stopped by this one tree. And when it stopped by that tree, it was just standing there looking at us. And it was big.
What if the forests we think we know so well are hiding something we're not ready to face? From chilling screams echoing through the ridges, to eyes glowing unnaturally in the dark, to footage experts still cannot debunk. From Florida's wild swamps to Kentucky's deep woods, from Oregon's legendary Blue Mountains to North Carolina's hidden ridges, the evidence is mounting. Are these just tall tales born from fear? Or are we closing in on undeniable proof that something extraordinary and intelligent is living among us? Across America's forests, countless people claim to have seen something impossible. Preachers, police officers, teenagers, and seasoned outdoorsmen, all describing encounters too vivid to ignore. In some cases, trail cameras have been tampered with as if by intelligence. In others, massive figures stepped into the headlights of law enforcement only to vanish in seconds. And sometimes all that remains are glowing eyes in the night, or the desperate stories of those who swore they came face to face with a predator beyond human comprehension. It's a gloomy day, the kind of day where the air feels heavy and the forest seems to carry secrets. Before we tell you why Bryce is here, let's see what brought him to this small corner of the community. He isn't here for speculation or campfire stories. He's here because a preacher, a man known for his honesty and respected by everyone around, has something he can't explain. His name is Tracy Turner, and he's agreed to sit down with Bryce face to face.
I'm on my way to talk to a preacher named Tracy Turner. He's an honest and well-respected pillar of the community. He was hearing some crazy sounds out of his backyard. He said he's willing to share that camera footage with me. I can't wait to hear what he got. Hey, Tracy.
Hey, hello there.
How's it going, man?
All right, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. I take it these are the backwoods where you heard some of those noises?
Back behind the house is where I heard the noise.
Tracy recalls that day vividly. It was August, just a little over a year ago. He was sitting quietly in his backyard, enjoying his morning coffee when something broke the silence. At first he thought it might be an animal, maybe a wolf, but as the sound grew, Tracy realized it was something far more unsettling. He grabbed his phone, hoping to capture it, and pressed record.
This was almost exactly a year ago. It was around August of last year. And I came out here with a cup of coffee just to relax in the evening. And I heard it, and I thought, what was that? So I got my camera out, and that's when I made the video, hoping that it would do it again, and it did. It was something that brought chills up on me when I heard it.
So then you actually had a physical response to this?
That's what scared me. I'd never heard anything like that.
The footage he showed Bryce was chilling. The sound didn't match anything ordinary. It wasn't a howl. It wasn't the cry of any predator he knew. Instead, it sounded disturbingly human. Tracy described it as if a woman was screaming in pain, echoing from somewhere deep in the ridge behind his home. The tone, the pitch, the intensity, every detail sent shivers down his spine. What makes this encounter even more intriguing is that Tracy isn't the first to say this. Bryce recalled an earlier Oregon expedition, where a woman claimed she'd heard the exact same thing. A sound like a woman crying out in distress, carried across the woods. Two people, miles apart, both describing the same chilling phenomenon.
You see the video? Do you have it on you?
Yeah, sure. There's the video here. I've had friends say it may be a wolf. It's not a wolf. I don't know, it sounded like a woman being hurt.
Really?
Screaming in pain almost.
There was a long sound, like a banshee. Like it sounded like a woman giving birth, like screaming.
It still brings goosebumps on me when I think about it. It sounded more or less like it was coming from the top of the ridge here.
But the story doesn't end there. Tracy's neighbor added another layer. During a winter hunting trip not far from this same ridge, he stumbled across a trail of massive footprints. so wide apart that even stretching stride by stride they couldn't match them. In some places, they had to leap just to land where the creature's foot had fallen. "I don't know what could have made something like that," the neighbor admitted. "Dense forests, hidden ridgelines, tracks no human could make, sounds that echo like screams in the night. The question is this the perfect place for something to hide? Something we're still not ready to confront?"
My neighbor was up hunting in the wintertime. He said, we saw some tracks up there that he said we couldn't stride ourselves. We had to jump from one track to the other.
And that was back in these woods here
That was
too?
in these woods too. I mean, these are some pretty dense forest. And it may be a Bigfoot is not that far out.
That was a close one. Bryce's next step takes him north to Washington State. It's night, the roads are quiet, and the air is heavy with that damp chill only the Pacific Northwest can deliver. But Bryce isn't here for scenery. He's here to meet someone who carries both authority and experience. Someone who's seen something he was never meant to see. The man's name is Rich. He's not a soldier. He's not a local storyteller. He's a police officer, law enforcement, and what he's about to reveal has haunted him for over 2 decades.
It's come to my attention that some people believe that the authorities here in Washington may actually be aware of Bigfoot.
I don't know what you think about Bigfoot, but they are real. The government knows about them, and they're in this area.
They're in the area?
Absolutely.
While the man I'm about to interview isn't in the military, he's an authority, and maybe he knows something about it.
It happened in July of 2000. Rich was on the graveyard shift, driving the long, empty back roads of Mason County. The night was unusually calm. No traffic, no noise, just the steady hum of his patrol car cutting through the silence. Then it happened.
As we discussed, you were in law enforcement and you had an encounter with a Bigfoot almost a decade ago, is that right?
More than that, two decades ago.
Wow.
July of 2000.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was coming down this road, and I was on graveyard shift. Just the road happened to be clear at this moment when I'm coming down in my patrol.
From the left side of the roadway, something stepped out of the darkness. A figure, massive, towering, strode into the beam of his headlights. Rich hit the brakes, stopping about 50 yards short of it. He remembers every detail. The chest was massive, like a wall of muscle. The body was covered in thick hair, dark and heavy. The sheer bulk of it didn't match any human proportions he'd ever seen. He estimates it stood nearly 8 feet tall, weighing somewhere between 800 and 1,000 pounds. With 4 long strides, the creature crossed the asphalt, slammed into the fence line on the far side of the road, and disappeared into the timber. Just like that, it was gone.
This figure steps onto the roadway. I stopped my car and about 50 yards from it. I mean, the chest was massive. The thickness of it, it was covered in hair. 8 feet tall, around 800 to 1,000 pounds.
Rich never saw the face. The creature never turned toward him. All he caught was its broad profile, the staggering size, and its effortless power as it moved.
It came out, profile to me, never looked at me.
Did you see the face, or?
No, it was profile to me, so
Yeah.
no face detail at all. It took 4 steps, hit the fence line on the other side of the road, and disappeared. That was it.
But that was enough to change him. The sighting left scars. After that night, Rich admits he struggled. He grew uneasy working alone. Even routine patrols felt heavier. He carried a mental weight he couldn't put down because he knew what he saw, and he knew nobody else would truly understand. And here's the thing, there were no dash cams back then. This was the early 2000s, no chance of hitting record, no proof beyond memory. But Rich insists on what he saw, and over the years, he's pieced together more than just a sighting.
What was your initial reaction?
And at first it's shock, because I know it's a Sasquatch, but There's more to it than meets the eye, even when you see it. I could tell you that it changed my behavior dramatically. I didn't like to go places alone for quite some time. It took me years before.
So you're feeling an unnormal dread?
Yeah, feeling a dread. If it wanted to do something to somebody, there's nothing anybody could do about it. It could just sneak up behind you and just grab you like that, and you'd be done.
As an officer, Rich had tracked crime scenes, studied terrain, and learned how people move through difficult landscapes. Applying that same knowledge to his encounter, he's convinced of one thing. If you want to track Bigfoot, don't just look in random forests. Look for drainage. He explains that drainages, hollows where water runs off the mountain, create natural pathways. They're easier to walk, the slopes are gentler, and they've been used for thousands of years as travel routes. Rich believes Bigfoot knows this, and uses these corridors to move silently, undetected, from one place to another.
What type of sort of topography or geographical markers should we be looking for?
Well, there's a lot of major drainages. They create natural pathways.
A drainage? You mean like a hollow where the water comes off the mountain?
It's easier walking, it has less gradient. These things have been using them for thousands of years to get from point A to point B. In an area of Mason County, there was so much density of sightings, and it certainly wasn't the same Bigfoots popping up all over the county.
And here's where it gets even more unsettling. He doesn't think these creatures travel alone. He believes they move in family groups, migrating together, which makes sense of the density of sightings in Mason County, a hotspot filled with stories just like his. For Bryce, this testimony feels eerily familiar, because back in Kentucky, during a previous investigation, they'd gathered almost identical evidence pointing to family units moving across the land. 2 different states, 2 different witnesses, same theory. If Rich is right, then maybe Bigfoot isn't just out there. Maybe they've been moving among us this whole time, not as lone wanderers, but as families, using ancient trails we no longer notice, but they've never forgotten.
What she believed to be a small print found within a larger print.
There was another footprint inside of that footprint.
Oh, wow.
Maybe there was something stepping in the side of the tracks.
Yeah.
If you ever notice deer, the fawns stay really close to mom. And I was like, could this be baby that are following their mother?
If the Bigfoot here move in family units, then the team needs to be on the lookout for a greater range of evidence.
It was daytime in the forest, the kind of afternoon where silence feels heavy. The air was still, almost too still, with barely a breeze moving through the trees. Sunlight filtered down in golden shafts through the canopy, breaking against the forest floor in sharp patches of light. It should have felt peaceful, but Russell knew better. Peace in these woods was deceptive. Something had passed through here, and he was determined to find out what. For weeks, Russell had been tracking movements he couldn't quite explain. Shadows slipping between trees, strange disturbances on ridge lines, the lingering sense that something was watching. But this time, he had come prepared. He wasn't relying on sightings or instincts anymore. He had armed the forest with a network of trail cameras and carefully placed tripwires. If something passed through here, it would be caught on film. At least, that was the plan.
Oh, look. The stump is down.
Russell walked the perimeter. At first glance, everything looked undisturbed. But then he noticed it. One of the tripwires was off balance. Something had crossed through during the night. His pulse quickened. Whatever it was had triggered the setup, and now the evidence should be waiting for him on the memory cards.
Look at this. Came right through here. Look at my tripwire. So it's coming this direction. I think I caught this thing off guard. Whatever moved through here is gonna be on these cameras. It's yesterday. One nighttime shot, but it's nothing.
The first camera brought only disappointment. Just one frame from the night before, a still shot of the empty forest. Nothing unusual, but the second trail camera was another story entirely. It hadn't simply missed the shot. It had been moved, shoved off to the side with such force that the tree bark itself bore the scar of the impact, a gouge etched deep into the wood. And here's the chilling part. The camera wasn't broken at random. It had been pushed deliberately, as if the creature knew where the lens was pointed and wanted to avoid it. That, Russell thought, isn't a chance. That's intelligence.
Look at my trail cam. Look at this. It got shoved off to the side. Remember, if this thing, it would be pointing right here, right at me, and now it's pointed out that way. There's a big gouge in the tree where that something shoved the trail cam off to the side. It knew the direction of that lens would see it.
As he examined the device, he noticed something else. Snagged against the casing of the camera was a single coarse strand of hair. It wasn't a deer, it wasn't a bear. The texture was different, thick, strong. He carefully preserved it, sealing it for laboratory testing. For the first time, he felt that the forest had given him something real, tangible proof that whatever passed through here wasn't just a shadow or trick of the eye. It had left a piece of itself behind. Finally, Russell turned to the footage. And there it was. Not a clear footage, but a fragment that sent shivers through his spine. A massive hand, dark, broad, and unmistakably humanoid, entered the frame. It didn't swipe at random. It reached for the camera, shoved it aside, and then maybe disappeared into the darkness. Just one fleeting moment, but enough to raise a terrifying possibility. This wasn't an accident. It was intentional. The message was clear. Whatever he was chasing didn't want to be seen. It knew what cameras were, and it knew how to avoid them. Russell pulled the card, packed up the hair sample, and called Bryce immediately. If this creature was intelligent enough to disable surveillance, then their investigation had just taken a dangerous new turn.
Do you see that? It's a freaking hair. Whatever pushed it. Look at that, it just shoved it. A couple strands of hair. Whatever pushed this camera left something behind. I want that. And I'm hoping that whatever pushed it is also captured on that card. All right, let's see. Holy crap. I can see what looks like the top part of a hand. Something either grabbed it this way or this way and pushed it. Let me get the card out of this thing. It's time to pull this card. I cannot wait to show Bryce what we've got.
The Kentucky eyeshine footage has long been considered one of the most compelling pieces of evidence for Bigfoot. After all, human eyes don't shine in the dark. The question is, what exactly was caught on camera that night? To investigate, the team from D-Max UK traveled deep into Daniel Boone National Forest, a vast stretch of Kentucky wilderness famous for its hardwood trees, bourbon mash, deer, and endless cover. The perfect place for something to hide.
A lot of forest and farms near the highways, but back for a lot of miles in a lot of directions, it's mostly woods.
The original video, now called the Kentucky Eyeshine, was filmed by Charles, who was in the forest with a member of the BFRO, the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. What they captured wasn't a clear body or silhouette, but something stranger. Two glowing eyes, large, unblinking, and far apart.
Wow, we're up here.
Yeah, this is the spot.
So, this is where it happened. Where were you standing?
I was standing right here on the rock. When we came up here, it was right before dark. And I was filming this area here. And when I turned around, there was eye shine coming from right through here.
Charles and his partner swore that while recording, a second creature moved in from the opposite side. To them, it felt like a strategy, not a chance. The D-Max team met Charles at the location. In daylight, the forest looked ordinary, but he walked them step by step through what happened, where he stood, where the eyes were, and how threatened they felt. So threatened, in fact, that they left the area immediately after the encounter.
Let's take a look at this thing.
Here's the first part where you can see right there, both eyes.
Yeah, both eyes just like shine bright, like right there. That's pretty amazing.
But the D-Max crew wasn't there to run, they were there to test. Could they recreate the conditions of the footage? Charles pointed to the exact tree where the glowing eyes had been. Measuring from the ground, the reflection's height came out to just over 8.9 feet. That number silenced the group. Almost 9 feet tall, too high for a deer, too tall for a person. Skeptics quickly raised the owl theory. Maybe the eyes belonged to a bird perched in the branches, but the branches didn't line up, and no owl has eyes that large, that far apart, and glowing with such intensity.
Whatever Charles filmed that night fits well within the range of being a Sasquatch, and at that height, eyes that big would make sense.
Now, in the original video, look at the crooked branch compared where the eyes are.
Whoa. See how far up above your head that is?
I'm tiny.
You're like a little over half its size.
As night fell, the team prepared for their own vigil. Thermal cameras were readied. The rain began to fall, making everything heavier, quieter, harder. They split up, covering different angles of the forest, and let out long, echoing calls. Sounds meant to mimic Sasquatch. No clear reply came. Only the tapping of rain and the hum of the woods.
Did you hear something?
That was significant.
Thermit, dude. We heard a big kaboom, sounding like something, almost like something dropped.
Still, the eyeshine video remained in their minds. Something had been there, watching, observing, choosing not to step into the open. That kind of awareness suggested intelligence, and that more than anything was unsettling. So what did Charles see? A massive creature standing almost 9 feet tall, silent in the trees? Or was it a trick of the night, an ordinary animal mistaken for something extraordinary? The truth remains unsettled. But for those who've seen the footage and stood in those woods, the memory of those glowing eyes never leaves. Because in Kentucky's forests, sometimes it's not what you see in the dark, but what's watching you. When we talk about Bigfoot hiding in the trees, there is one piece of footage that cannot be ignored. Many call it one of the best pieces of evidence ever caught on camera. The name is Paul Freeman, and the footage dates back to August of 1992 in the Blue Mountains of Oregon. Paul Freeman wasn't just an average outdoorsman with a camera. He was an experienced former U.S. Forest Service patrolman, a man who knew the wilderness like the back of his hand. Freeman had been frequenting Deduct Spring for weeks after noticing something unusual. Massive footprints pressed into the soil, with a stride and size that no known animal could match.
August 20th, 1992, Blue Mountains, Oregon. Paul Freeman, an experienced former U.S. Forest Service patrolman, has been frequenting Deduct Spring for a few weeks after seeing unusual footprints.
First came the tracks, ample evidence suggesting Bigfoot activity. Then came the noises, something heavy moving in the timberline, snapping branches with force. And finally came the moment that would change Paul's life forever. With his camera rolling, Freeman saw it, a massive, upright creature, moving with purpose through the forest. The figure wasn't just a blur in the distance. It was there, solid, dark, towering, walking along the trees with striking fluidity.
First, he discovers ample evidence of Bigfoot activity, including multiple tracks.
Yeah, look at there.
Next, he hears something forging its way through the woods. And finally, he sees this.
I hear the brush popping and stuff. Oh, there he goes.
When Paul returned home that day, his son Mike was in the basement. Mike remembers the sound of his father rushing up the stairs, something he had never witnessed before. Paul's face was pale, his body covered in sweat and dirt, and his hands trembling. In Mike's words, it was the only time he had ever seen his father truly scared. And that, perhaps, said more than the footage itself.
His dad rushed home with the footage.
I kind of ran up the stairs, and here's my dad standing there, and he's covered in sweat and dirt, and he's pale in color, and he's shaking. I always tell people that that's the only time in my entire life that I ever saw my dad scared of anything.
Cliff Barackman, a renowned field researcher and close friend of the Freeman family, has long spoken about the weight of Paul's work. Paul wasn't just a witness, he was a dedicated researcher. For over a decade, Freeman had been compiling reports of sightings, carefully recording the dates and locations on a massive map pinned to the wall of his basement. Every mark represented a story, every pin a possible piece of a much larger puzzle. The Blue Mountains were alive with whispers of Sasquatch, and Paul was determined to find the truth. The data Freeman collected, footprints, maps, and now his video evidence, would go on to be studied more than any other Bigfoot dataset in history. PhDs, anthropologists, and wildlife experts pored over the material, many concluding that it could not easily be dismissed as a hoax.
Paul had been collecting data on a series of maps for 10 years. Every time a sighting report came in, he would record the location and the date on a large map that was hanging in his basement. The evidence collected by Paul Freeman and his network of researchers in the Blue Mountains has been closely examined by more PhDs and anthropologists than any other data set in all Bigfoot history.
Wildlife biologist Floyd Hayes was one of the experts who examined the footage. To him, the figure captured on camera was simply not a bear. While black bears can be large, dark, and occasionally rise onto their hind legs, they cannot walk long distances upright, nor do they exhibit the same posture Freeman's footage revealed. Hayes pointed out the flatter face of the figure compared to the pointed snout of a bear. The way it moved, the way it carried its weight, and the proportions of its body simply didn't add up to anything known. His conclusion was clear. This could not be ruled out as Bigfoot.
A black bear can be large and black, and it can walk on its two hind legs, but this animal seems to be a fully functional quadruped walking routinely on its hind legs, and bears only walk short distances on their hind legs. This also seems to have a much flatter face than a bear, which has a much more pointed snout. So I don't think that is a bear. I cannot rule this out as being a Bigfoot.
Next came the analysis of Dr. Jeff Meldrum, an anatomist and anthropologist who gained recognition early in his career through his study of Freeman's cast footprints. Meldrum compared the figure's movements to the famous Patterson-Gimlin film of 1967, widely considered the most famous Bigfoot footage ever recorded. What struck him immediately was the massiveness of the figure in Freeman's tape. The proportions were uncanny. A relatively small head set low into the shoulders, the massive trapezius muscles rising high into the back of the skull, broad shoulders supporting arms that swung with impressive length and fluidity. Meldrum pointed out the way the light played across the creature's hair, shifting naturally with movement. Something faux fur could never replicate. If this was a hoax, he argued, it would require someone with extremely advanced knowledge of animal anatomy, costume design, and natural behavior, far beyond the resources available in 1992, and even now, still difficult to replicate convincingly. The Freeman footage has since become one of the crown jewels in Bigfoot research. Unlike many blurry, short clips, Freeman's film shows a full-bodied creature walking naturally through the forest, its size, weight, and gait consistent with eyewitness reports spanning decades. For believers, it is some of the clearest proof that Sasquatch exists. For skeptics, it remains an unsolved riddle, a challenge to dismiss without definitive counter-explanation. What makes Freeman's encounter so compelling is not just the footage itself, but the man behind it. Paul Freeman was no stranger to the forest. He had years of field experience, a background in law enforcement, and a reputation for honesty within his community. His sudden fear and shaken demeanor after the encounter only reinforced the gravity of what he saw.
As it walks across, one can't help but be struck by resemblances to the Patterson-Gimlin film. The massiveness of this figure is impressive. This smallish head set low down on the shoulders with massive musculature. Trapezius coming high up on the back of the head is quite apparent. The length of the arms is impressive.
Even today, nearly 3 decades later, the Freeman footage is still studied, still debated, still dissected frame by frame. And yet, no one has managed to fully debunk it. Experts continue to argue over what was captured that day in the Blue Mountains. Was it just another misidentified animal? A man in a costume? Or did Paul Freeman, in that fleeting August moment, capture one of the rarest glimpses into a living legend? A Sasquatch walking freely through the Oregon wilderness? The answers remain elusive, but the tape endures. And in the world of Bigfoot, that's enough to keep the debate alive. Now we have a bonus sighting for you, one that comes with a local twist and a history of strange activity. A man from Hickory claims he captured Bigfoot on video. But this isn't just any shaky cell phone clip in the middle of nowhere. What makes this case more interesting is where it was filmed. McDowell County, an area already marked by multiple reports of Bigfoot encounters over the years. And this sighting was significant enough to make it onto WCNC News. The Hickory man recalls that it all began with a sound, a heavy thud, followed by the distinct crash of a rock being thrown. That alone was unsettling. Rocks being hurled from the tree line is one of the most frequently reported behaviors tied to Bigfoot encounters. He scanned the woods, heart racing, when movement caught his eye. Something large, something dark, hidden between the trees. Pulling out his cell phone, he pressed record. And there it was. A towering figure partially concealed by the thick forest. Its sheer size dwarfed the surrounding brush. The camera shook as he tried to steady his hands, but the figure never left its place. Watching, waiting.
He captured something amazing on his cell phone camera, video of Bigfoot.
Yeah, he recorded this video in McDowell County where several people reported seeing the creature over the years. NBC Charlotte's Brandon Goldner spoke to the man who described his experience.
McDowell County has long been considered a hot spot, and this sighting only added to the mystery. Locals were divided. Some called him delusional, even mad. Yet, the man insisted he knew what he saw, and he wasn't alone in his belief. Earlier that summer, another local, Vicky Cook, shared her own grainy footage of a similar creature, filmed right outside her Cleveland County home. Skeptics dismiss it, believers stand by it, and among them, his granddaughter, who continues to believe her grandfather captured something real, something that still lurks in those North Carolina woods. The Finding Bigfoot team had an interesting question. Which ancient wilderness held more Sasquatch activity, Washington's Olympic Peninsula or British Columbia? Bobo and Rane, forming the U.S. team, dived into the Olympic Peninsula, a region famous for the very legends they were looking for, even giving rise to the name Sasquatch itself. As seasoned researchers, they moved with regard through these tribal lands.
Can't even see my hand in front of my face.
Out here on the Olympic Peninsula, there is a rich history of reports, and there's no other place where I've spent more time in the woods than right here. So it would be very fitting if this is the place where I find a Bigfoot tonight. Plus, we have Monkey on our team. This wager is in the bag.
This intense darkness multiplied every sound, every distant rustle, sharpening their senses and preparing them for the unknown. Their initial search involved looking for animal tracks, quickly finding bear scat, a small reassurance of ordinary life. But as night fell, a different reality set in. The darkness on the Olympic Peninsula was not to be messed with, a thick, tangible blackness that Rane described as the most absolute she had ever experienced, making it impossible to see her hand in front of her face. Despite the creepy quiet, Bobo felt a strong vibe that this was the night. Then, the forest whispered its first terrifying secret. Rane heard a subtle movement in the brush, followed by a clear, sharp wood knock.
I mean, it says I heard something further back make a noise.
Yeah, bigger, right?
Like a vocal kind of noise. Like, there's something in there. Right there. Listen.
Bobo, do you hear that?
It was an unmistakable sound, a slow, calculated way of communication. Both instantly snapped to high alert, the playful quiet replaced by a tense expectation. They decided to respond with their own knocks and calls, pushing deeper, excited to explore the possibilities. Just as their intense efforts continued, the night's creepy silence was shattered by something far more unsettling than a Sasquatch. A loud generator roared to life directly below them, followed almost immediately by a powerful hunting spotlight that swept through the trees, eventually locking onto their exact position.
I'm thinking my throat's kind of throsh. You want to do a duet whoop?
Okay.
All right, I'm ready.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Echo.
Let's do one more.
1, 2, 3. Oh, this was lice. Is that
He's gonna come up here. He's right there.
Bobo's mind directly went to the idea of hearing gunshots. The very real threat of human danger replaced the thrill of the hunt. Recognizing the situation, they made the sensible decision of going back, their Bigfoot search overpowered by the urgent need for safety. Their night on the Olympic Peninsula, though not very fruitful in a direct Sasquatch sighting, left them with a chilling and unforgettable encounter that proved the wilderness held its own terrifying, unexpected dangers. The latest adventure from Sasquatch Theory took viewers directly into the heart of the mystery, starting with compelling footage captured from a gifting basket. Something furry and clearly wary of the camera reached in, taking off with bread, apples, and cookies, while oddly leaving the bananas untouched, which gives us a bit of understanding of the creature.
But the idea is, when he comes up here, he's gonna look into the gift basket, and hopefully the camera will capture something. I really doubt it, but it's worth a shot, just because we can't sit back and not do anything and say, well, they're gonna know what we're gonna do. Because if that was the case, people wouldn't have eye sightings, people wouldn't catch these things screwing up.
This footage set the stage for the host's deeply personal journey, camping alone in the very area where he'd had past Bigfoot encounters. This wasn't for entertainment, but a years-in-the-making mental challenge, driven by a desire to truly understand these curious beings and share his raw experiences. His mission was to provide a rare, raw look into their world, observing how Sasquatch operated near human activity and moving beyond speculation to seek direct answers. He had been gifting in the area for weeks.
All right, so I got the night vision on, and this is what it looks like without the IR flashlight. I don't want to aim it towards the fire because you don't want to aim an IR device into a bright light. There's my camp. Oh, there's a whippoorwill going off. Very cool.
Leaving offerings, and had noticed a surge in activity, including strange tree structures with triangles, arches, and woven saplings, which he understood as actual signs of their presence and even a form of communication. Setting up his hammock and tarp at the edge of the woodline, he explained why he chose this spot. Rather than diving into the deepest wilderness, he camped closer to civilization, believing these smart creatures, much like deer, would circle and observe before revealing themselves.
They'll let me know it, but at the same time, how do you know if something's a threat or if it's just them being Sasquatch? We don't. We just kind of take the risk.
As darkness fully encompassed the area, the sounds of the forest intensified with the chirping of crickets, the calls of distant coyotes and owls. Yet, an unexpected tension lay in these familiar sounds. This was a known Sasquatch area for him, a place where he'd personally seen them before, and being here alone at night for the first time since those encounters was a very huge step.
I'm not gonna lie, all the sounds of the forest is pretty intimidating, but I'm close to home, so I'm not that worried about it. But this is a Sasquatch area, and I know that for sure because I'd seen them like I told you guys, but it's nerving being in here, being in an area where you know you've seen Sasquatch.
He acknowledged the great risks, but spoke very peacefully, trusting that if they truly didn't want him there, they would certainly make their displeasure known. He relied on the subtle signs he'd learned to recognize: faint sounds of stick breaks, sounds that seemed like small birds or squirrels, but with no visible animal, indicating a cautious, intelligent creature merging smartly into the wild. As the night went on, activity around his campsite became more clear. He started hearing a subtle movement and distinct stick breaks, not just near his camp, but especially around the tree structures he had identified along the trail and around the gifting site.
Over where I showed you guys the structure, right down the trail, I'm hearing more stick breaks. And straight out in front of me, past the gifting site and the other structures, I'm hearing some stick breaks and movement. But I can't figure out what it is for sure.
He noted the local blue jays fussing, a common wilderness sign that animals were on the move, and suspected they were indirectly alerting the Sasquatch to his exact position. Earlier, he had even seen a black, upright shadow move through a nearby power line strip, followed by deer and coyotes, leaving him with a disturbing sense of being observed, perhaps even surrounded. Despite the creepy atmosphere and the weird feeling of being watched, he remained strong in his commitment, hoping his new gear would finally capture the definitive evidence he looked for. His determination to his goal was to document the reality of Bigfoot, even if it required to have deeply unsettling experiences alone in the dark. DJ Faison, joined by psychic medium Amber and Chris, went on to Purgatory Road in Delaware, a place known for both paranormal activity and, surprisingly, Bigfoot sightings. CJ, a self-proclaimed Bigfoot skeptic, was about to have his knowledge of Bigfoot challenged due to the incidents that were to follow. The night began with an immediate sense of strangeness. As Amber, the psychic, offered her initial readings of the road's energy, a strange, almost on-cue sound, like a fire alarm, started and abruptly stopped.
Hey, is there somebody out there?
God, somebody comes running out of the woods right now.
Yep, I'm out.
Never seen my face on that fast.
So, to answer your question, yes, I have been in the woods, but not like deep in those woods.
Like a state park thing, or what is it?
Yeah, it's owned by the state, yeah.
It was a creepy start to the strangeness that would unfold. CJ also pointed out different tree formations, bent and curved in ways that were just not possible, hinting at something large and powerful being responsible for this. As they went deeper into the woods, the atmosphere grew heavier. Amber warned about a feeling of being dragged deeper, a sense of being lost. Then, the night took another strange turn. A fire truck, sirens blaring, suddenly appeared on the gloomy road, its crew asking if anyone had called 911.
Called 911?
They can't find who called 911.
He just said you didn't call 911, did you?
There's not houses like
anywhere near here.
No.
Dude, what?
What?
How did you come out here though?
The
Like, it's a crazy night, right?
That is insane.
I'm speechless right now. I don't know what to think.
So they got a call. Did they ping it this way? We should have asked them.
I know.
Why else would they have been out here?
Kind of like in a
They're
hurry.
like looking for who called.
This was shocking, as there were no houses in the area, and the timing felt very weirdly coincidental, especially because of the full moon that night. The incident left them deeply shocked, questioning the reality of what in the world was going on. The most shocking event of the night was when they were making their way back. A large, dark, upright shadow figure, too big to be human, was seen moving urgently through the woods.
Okay. It's like really soft ground. I don't know if I'm walking in like a marsh area, and I don't know where.
CJ, despite his doubts, was left stunned, admitting it was either the darkest and largest shadow figure he'd ever seen, or indeed the myth, the legend, Bigfoot itself. The encounter was so intense that it drained his camera battery almost instantly, adding another layer of unexplainable shock. Throughout the night, they also encountered a weird, unidentifiable burnt smell, heard creepy whistles, and witnessed more of the strangely bent trees, reinforcing the idea that something extraordinary, possibly Bigfoot, was watching them from the shadows of this haunted forest. When the footage aired on the History Channel, it immediately set off all the critics and skeptics. What viewers saw was something straight out of a sci-fi thriller, a towering 8-foot creature covered in brown hair, locked inside what looked like a heavy-duty cage. Armed men stood nearby, tense but watchful. The only sound was the low hum of equipment, adding to the creepy quiet that hung over the scene. For some, the fact that it was being shown on a major network gave the footage instant credibility. Could it be? Had Bigfoot finally been caught? But not everyone bought it. Critics were quick to point out how controlled the whole thing looked. The lighting was perfect, the background too neat. It felt more like a movie set than a real discovery in the wild. Still, there was no denying the fact of what was in that cage. The creature stared straight into the camera, its eyes sharp and intelligent. Not wild, but aware yet also angry. That stare shook people. Was it just an actor in a costume? Or were we looking into the eyes of something ancient yet unknown? Then a man stepped forward to speak, breaking the silence. He explained that they planned to collect samples, hair, blood, whatever they could to analyze the creature's DNA.
Okay, this is it. We're gonna have to tranquilize the animal again so that I can safely go in and get some samples. I'll be taking blood, hair, and saliva so that we can compare to other sightings and establish a baseline genetic profile.
The goal was to finally answer the question, what exactly is Bigfoot? But the creature wasn't going down without a fight. It began thrashing violently against the bars of its cage, every movement filled with strength. It wasn't just angry, it was furious and completely unafraid. The men kept their distance, weapons ready, watching carefully. The air felt filled with tension, and then came the dart. A tranquilizer was fired, hitting the creature squarely. It shook, but kept fighting, unwilling to go down. Slowly, though, its body began to give in. The energy drained from its limbs, and finally it collapsed, unconscious. The team rushed inside the cage, wasting no time. They carefully took the samples they'd come for, working quickly around the enormous, slumped figure. The final shot lingered on the still body of the creature, surrounded by people with weapons, a legendary figure, brought down not by hunters, but by curiosity and cold science. And just like that, the debate exploded. Had we just witnessed history, or the best theatrics ever pulled off? For believers, it was the proof they'd been waiting for. For skeptics, it was just another well-produced mystery. But one thing was certain, no one could look away. Have you ever felt like the mountains were watching you? Not just the wind, not just the trees, but something alive. In the high reaches of the eastern Sierras, where the snow stays late and the air thins, people say something moves between the pines. Bigfoot, Sasquatch, a creature most will never see, but some will never forget. Bill was one of those people. It was May. He was up on Coyote Ridge, nearly 10,000 feet above sea level. The snow was still thick, crunching under his boots. His dogs ran ahead, kicking up white powder. It felt like any other quiet day, until it wasn't. Watch this part in the far left of the frame, behind the trees. Something dark moved quickly. Not a skier, not a hiker. It walked smooth, almost gliding, with no bounce in its stride. Bill zoomed in later, 400%, and the shape became clear. Dark fur, a domed head, long arms swinging with each step. It slipped into thick cover, pulled branches aside, and squatted low, watching. The dog seemed to notice. Its head turned toward the shadow, but Bill didn't see it. Not yet. He panned away to film his dogs, never realizing a massive figure was only yards away, hidden in the trees. When RMSO slowed the footage to half speed, the details became sharper. You could see the arms move. The body didn't match a human frame. And the way it stopped, low and still, felt more like a predator than a passerby. Arthur knew that feeling. His story happened in 1997, deep in Sequoia National Park. He was a ranger back then, sent to investigate strange sounds in an overgrown area visitors rarely entered. Noon sun filtered through thick brush. He had a tranquilizer rifle in the Jeep, just in case. Then came the growl, deep, close. He turned and froze. It stood taller than any grizzly he'd seen. Reddish-brown fur, wide shoulders, human-like hands, massive and strong. Its face wasn't animal, it was something else entirely. Arthur's voice shakes even now as he describes it charging toward him. He dove into the Jeep just as it hit, smashing the window. The glass burst inward. It grunted, angry, hurt, then chased him on all fours, fast as a sprinting chimp. Arthur floored it, swerving around curves until the thing was gone. When he returned, shaken and pale, his boss didn't believe him, called him a liar, fired him. For years he kept silent, living with the fear, the dreams, the panic attacks, and still he insists it was no bear. Bears don't have human faces. They don't watch from cover. They don't run like that. Look closely.
Be careful.
In the eastern Sierras and the Sequoia forests, sightings like these keep stacking up, each one different, each one eerily the same. So, what walks these mountains? And if you ever meet its gaze, will you survive to tell the story? Have you ever walked into a place that felt untouched? Not just quiet, but guarded. Deep in Oregon's private logging lands, behind locked gates and long-forgotten roads, something has been crossing the gravel at night. Twice now, witnesses have reported a towering figure stepping out of the timber, heading toward a place few people ever go. Cliff Barackman and Nico Spadafora call it Easter Island. They gave it that name so they can talk about it without giving away the real location. It's a place of thick forests, game trails, and no casual visitors. With new permits in hand, they finally stepped into hundreds of unexplored acres, hoping to learn why Sasquatches seem drawn here. They start by walking old logging roads, eyes scanning for soft mud that might hold tracks. The air is cool, the forest still. Then, signs of life. Watch this part.
Look at this. This is a game highway. This isn't a one-time travel path or something. This area right here is used a lot. And a neat thing about this is that if you drew a line from where this game highway is to the location on the road where Sasquatches have been seen twice now, it's less than a quarter mile.
They find what Cliff calls a game highway, a wide, worn path cutting straight toward the very spot where both sightings happened. It's less than a quarter mile away. Hoof prints, scat, and bent grass all say this route is used often. And where prey walk, predators watch. They move deeper. A pile of fresh bear scat steams faintly in the shade. Bears mean abundant food, and where bears thrive, Sasquatches might too. A snapped tree catches their eye, its top broken, not twisted, as if something heavy leaned hard against it. No elk marks, no human saw. The road sinks lower, grass creeping over the gravel. Brambles thicken, tangles of Himalayan blackberry, thorned and dense. Perfect cover. Something could lie inside and never be seen.
Lots of snowberry too. Right here, yeah. Don't know why all the berries are still here, none of the leaves, but...
Walk right through it all, didn't notice.
A glint of water pulls them forward. They push through until the trees open onto a small pond, ringed with fresh shoots. Deer prints crowd the shore. A narrow trail winds down to the water's edge. From a cliff above, anything could watch the animals below without being seen. Look closely.
Lo and behold, there's a pond down here, and where there's water, there are plants, and where there are plants, there are herbivores, and where there are herbivores, there are their predators.
It's a perfect hunting blind, or a perfect lookout. The cliff also leads back toward the original game highway, but to get there means fighting through steep, thorn-covered slopes. The climb is brutal. Brambles claw at their clothes, thorn tips finding skin. Steep ground forces them to grab at roots and rocks. Halfway up, Nico freezes. Fresh bear tracks in the soft soil. The animal used the same route, likely just hours earlier. The view from the top is worth it. From here, the movement of deer below is clear. The pond glimmering through breaks in the canopy. It's exactly the kind of place a hidden watcher might return to again and again. Watch here.
I thought that looked like a bear trail earlier.
Look at that.
Oh yeah, right there, huh? That's a good shot here. You can see with the light and everything.
Yeah, fantastic.
Cool.
That's a good one.
2 road crossings, a game highway, fresh bear sign, remote terrain with rich food sources. Every piece points the same way. This could be a travel route for Sasquatches. So the question is, how many times has something already stood here, watching? And next time, will anyone be close enough to see it? It was early October, deep in the Alabama backwoods. The kind of place where daylight fades fast and every sound carries, but you can't tell from where. The man telling this story had hunted these woods for decades. A lifelong outdoorsman, he knew the difference between a bear, a buck, and everything else. He had spent countless mornings before sunrise in the tree stands, evenings tracking deer along game trails, and nights listening to the low calls of owls. The woods were like an old friend, one that spoke in rustles, cracks, and whispers. That evening, the air was cool and crisp. The ground was soft with fallen pine needles, muffling his slow, careful steps. A bow was slung across his shoulder, its weight familiar. A companion on hunts since his youth. Shadows stretched long across the ridges, and the only movement came from leaves drifting down in silence. The scent of damp earth and pine hung in the air, wrapping around him like a quiet warning. He scanned the tree line as he moved, eyes catching on every flicker of motion. A squirrel leaping, a branch swaying, but nothing out of the ordinary. Then, a crack. Not close, but heavy, like something big shifting its weight. He stopped and listened. Another step followed, this time in rhythm with his own. Not a deer, not a hunter. Watch this part.
Okay, now what I wanted to do today was tell you where I received my first Bigfoot report. This was not my sighting. I had my first sighting where I was living at my house many years ago. But this was the first time that somebody come by my house and said, I just saw the giant monkey, was what it was called back then.
His instincts told him to stay still, to let the forest speak. The wind whispered through the treetops, but beneath it came another sound. Measured, deliberate. His breathing slowed, his ears strained. Every nerve seemed tuned to that steady cadence. Up ahead, 50 yards, he saw it. Broad shoulders, dark hair hanging in thick layers down its back. Its arms swung low, past the hips, each movement smooth but powerful. It stepped into a shaft of fading light. For a moment it just stood there, looking right at him. And that's when he saw its face. Not animal, not fully. It looked too human. Watch this moment.
Right up here in this curve was where this thing come running across the road. And the guy that that's what we had heard it was a giant monkey. And that's what everybody in this area called it, and that's what we thought it was. But this guy here, after he saw it that day, he knew that it was not a monkey.
His breath caught, every muscle tightened, caught between the urge to run and the pull of trying to understand. The eyes locked on his were dark and unblinking, holding him still like a deer in headlights. The figure turned, moving up the ridge in long, powerful strides. No sound except the swish of wet grass and the faint crack of branches underfoot. Within seconds, it was gone, swallowed by the trees. He stayed frozen, bow still in his hands. His heart pounded, but his legs refused to move. Even now, years later, he says the same thing. It wasn't a bear, it wasn't a man, it was something else.
Okay, now we're up here in the curve, and right here's the bank. Right here is where it slid off, and you could actually, back then it wasn't as covered with pine straw as it is now, but now those woods back out there look pretty much like they did back in around 1971 or 72.
In a place where hunters know every trail and every shadow, something walked that didn't belong. Its gaze lingered in his memory, leaving a question he could never answer. So what was it that watched him from the ridge that night, and how many others have felt the same eyes in the dark? In June 2018, Jen and Gina, also known as the She-Squatchers, headed out to a remote, swampy bog in Minnesota after hearing about a possible Bigfoot sighting. According to the witness, they'd seen something big and mysterious moving between two groups of trees deep in the wetlands. Knowing how risky it would be to hike through that kind of terrain, the two decided not to go in blindly. Instead, they found a safer spot nearby and set up with their night vision gear, hoping to spot something from a distance. For hours, they scanned the area through the darkness, eyes locked on the patch of woods where the sighting was reported.
The recording of the, Can you see it?
The bog was too tough to cross that night, but even from a distance, Roadway, they stayed alert in hopes for any sign that the stories might be true. Just as Jen and Gina were about to pack up and call it a night, something strange and completely unexpected caught their eyes. Deep in the trees, just where the Bigfoot had supposedly been seen, lights started to flicker and move.
This is interesting.
Can you see it? Is it there?
It's moving.
These weren't the kind of lights you'd mistake for flashlights or reflections. They shifted and darted, as if they had a mind of their own. The two women stared, stunned, then quickly turned their night vision camera back on and aimed it at the strange display. They managed to capture some of it on video, watching the lights float and pulse in ways that made no sense. Trying to make sense of it, Jen pulled up satellite images to check for roads or houses nearby, or anything that might explain what they were seeing. But there was nothing. No roads, no cabins.
Can't see any of them now. But I'm getting it on tape. Now it's toward the bottom. Can you see it?
No signs of human activity at all. Just marshland and trees. And then, just when they thought the night couldn't get weirder, it did. As they were getting ready to leave and turned off their night vision camera, the lights inside their car suddenly flickered on and off. Not once, but 3 times, on their own. There was no one touching the controls. The timing was creepy, and it left them shocked.
I can see one.
There was 2. It's moving through.
Wondering if it was somehow connected to the lights they had just seen in the bog. They couldn't say for sure what had happened, but one thing was crystal clear. The whole experience was deeply disturbing. Whatever was out there, it wasn't something they could explain, and it only added to the growing mystery surrounding the Minnesota Bigfoot. A crew member of the YouTube channel Sunny Vader went on a solitary 4-day and night exploration to a remote winter campsite deep within the Canadian Rockies. This wasn't just a camping trip. It was an investigation into unsettling events that had forced a local native band to abandon Spirit Camp, a sacred site once used for ceremonies. Some of the recently occurring disturbing instances, including alleged body tampering, strange vocalizations, and unconfirmed sightings, had made the area too spooky even for those who had lived there. The crew members' mission was to discover clues, spending days in the snow-capped landscape, observing strange drawings etched into trees, and looking at the prancing deer. He gathered wood to help build fires for warmth, going through both day and night in the isolated, freezing environment. His constant determination in the snow-covered paths, surrounded by the unsettling history of the site, set the stage for an unexplainable encounter with the unknown. As night fell over the silent, snow-covered terrain, the camper's senses were heightened by the extreme quiet and bitter cold. He was alone, fully immersed in an environment that had driven a native band away due to incidents that could not be understood. The crisp air carried every distant sound, and the stark white of the snow made every shadow appear massive. He maintained his camp, keeping the fire going for warmth and protection, while his recording equipment silently monitored the freezing surroundings. The isolation was intense, broken only by the natural sounds of the wild forest. Then, in the dead of night, the silence was destroyed. The camper was suddenly awakened by a strange sound coming from the darkness beyond his camp. It was unlike any animal sound he recognized, which was deep, guttural, and yet somehow appeared intelligent. The sound sliced through the cold air, raising the hair on the nape of his neck. This was exactly the kind of strange sounds that had been reported at Spirit Camp, one of the key reasons the local band had left the site. He lay still, listening intently as the chilling sound echoed across the frozen landscape. That moment confirmed everything he'd heard about Spirit Camp. The eerie stillness, the odd markings on trees he'd noticed earlier, the jittery deer, they'd all hinted at something just out of sight. But it was the sound that night, raw and impossible to explain, that truly shook him. After spending 4 long days and nights alone at what was once a sacred ceremonial burial ground, he was sure of one thing: something was still there. And maybe that's why some places, no matter how meaningful, are better left alone. From the vibrating ground of a sequoia campsite to the eerie wood knocks in a Delaware forest, and from weird lights in a Minnesota bog to guttural sounds in the Canadian Rockies, these accounts create a vivid, disturbing picture of encounters that just cannot be explained. If you have ever caught something that you cannot explain, do share with us. Each and every story can help us get closer to the truth. Till then,